Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to Finland once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that arrived in Riku box number 2. So first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to Riku Sinaksanaho, my Finnish beer mule living in Oulu in the northwest of Finland. It's thanks to him that you guys are getting to enjoy a steady stream of Finnish beer reviews, and I'm sure this will continue for many years to come. Lovely guy, very knowledgeable about his beers, and he sent me some absolute crackers over the last little while. So Riku, thank you again for making this review and all the other Finnish ones possible. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. These guys are very new and also very local to Riku, in fact, and they seem to have a really interesting way of doing things. So hopefully this makes for an interesting beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it as well. So for this review, we are going to go to a little place called Haukipudas, which is just to the north of Oulu in the northwest of Finland, and we're having a look at my first beer from Panimo Narri. So this particular beer is called Tears of Atum. It comes in at 9.3% ABV, and it's brewed with Angelica and Fireweed, which should be quite interesting. Some interesting herbs actually, and it's also brewed in collaboration with the Aeon, which is a band. So yeah, I think this one could make for a very interesting beer. A big beast of a half-litre bottle as well, so this one will be getting shared, definitely. But yeah, really curious to see how it turns out. Always nice to introduce new breweries here on the channel, and like I said, I hope you guys enjoy my take on this one. So let's go for it. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Panimo Narri. I think I have one more of their beers that Riku sent me, so we'll see about reviewing that a little bit later on, and hopefully we can do more beyond that. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Finnish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. And especially if you're watching in Finland, do let me know about some of the other Finnish breweries that I've not covered yet, and we'll see if Riku can get a hold of those for us. But yeah, let's get cracking with this one then. On to my brewery notes. So, Panimo Narri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Haukipudas, which is to the north of Oulu, and the company was founded back in 2019 by Jana Uversti, who is an engineer by trade, but also a long-time home brewer, having had 8 years experience at the time of starting the company. But he'd previously been involved with the gypsy brewery Eclipse Ale Works, but he decided that he wanted to have the full freedom to brew as he wished, and so he started his own company. The first beers were produced in late 2020, and they can now be bought directly from the brewery, so that just shows you how new this brewery actually is. But the brewery does a variety of different styles, but Jana adds a number of different adjuncts into the beers, and many of these are herbs that he actually harvests himself, which is pretty cool. So you're getting a truly kind of unique beer when it comes to Panimo Narri, which is awesome. But he's developed a very unique style on the back of this. There's several different styles of beers that have been produced by the brewery so far. So he's done IPAs, he's done Doppelbocks, Tripels, things like this. But he uses a 100-litre Kamuri all-in-one brewing system. He's got a couple of 240-litre tanks in there, and in his first year he produced around 5,000 litres of beer. But the brewery imagery that they use, as you can see, the artwork is really interesting. It's based on tarot cards and occultism, and the name Narri is actually the Fool, one of the tarot cards. So yeah, it's basically the Fool brewery, if you like. But yeah, as of April 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, he's produced about 10 beers for release commercially, but he has developed quite a few more recipes beyond that, from what I understand. I think it said in the article I read there was about 25 or so different beers have been produced, or the recipes have been done so far actually, but I think there's only about 10 have been sold according to Untappd. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Panimo Narri just now. Still a very new brewery, and I'm sure we'll be able to add to those notes at some point in the fairly near future. But these guys, I think probably you can term this a nano brewery rather than a micro brewery, because they are very small. But yeah, always cool to be able to review random stuff like this for you on the channel, so I'm glad that Riku chose to send me this one. But yeah, as I say, that's all I can can tell you, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. I'll put the links to their social media there. I need to check actually, I can't remember whether these guys do have a website, but if not, I'll put the link to some of their social media so you can check them out, and you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram, of course, and that will keep you up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about the different beers that they've done. So yeah, that now leads us to the tasting section of the video. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this one before we open up. I do like that. You can see like the little pharaoh statue in the middle there, and that will become apparent in a minute when I explain exactly the meaning behind the name there. But there you can see the symbol of the Aeon, so I need to go and check out these guys as well, and it's one of these pop top bottles. But yes, I wonder why he chose to do a half litre of this. I wonder why he chose to sell this in half litres rather than the little cans, because the other can I've got is a little 330, but maybe it's intended for sharing, and as I say, that's what I'm going to do with this one after we filmed it. But yeah, a big 9.3% monster of a thing. I think this should be quite interesting. But yeah, Angelica and Fireweed. Angelica, from what I understand, is supposed to be quite an earthy sort of herbal thing, and Fireweed is actually, I've seen Fireweed around, it's that big tall flower thing, it's a big tall pink flower, if you like, with the sort of long kind of needle-like petals actually. So yeah, I'm curious to see how that comes out there. You can actually see both of the herbs on the artwork on this one, so I have to say that is pretty cool. So the Fireweed is this pink flower thing here, and then the Angelica is or Angelica, not sure how you should pronounce that, is the other plant that's in there as well, the green one. So yeah, lovely artwork on it, I have to say. Very sort of black metal, which I think is really cool, or occultist, as I think Yana prefers it to be referred to. And you can see on the side of the bottle here is the Panimo Narri symbol, which is pretty cool. But yeah, this looks very, very nice. So just to tell you a little bit about the name of this beer, I took a few notes on the name of the beer. So it's called Tears of Atum. Atum is a deity from Egyptian mythology. He apparently created his children, who were also deities, out of loneliness, but then they disappeared into the darkness one day, and so when he was unable to bear this loss, he sent the Eye of Ra to find them, and he shed tears of joy upon their return. So yeah, the Eye of Ra was a kind of fiery beast, if you like, so maybe that's the idea behind using the Fireweed in this one. But yeah, the tears, Atum's tears of joy when his children returned to him out of the darkness, that's the idea behind the name of this one. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. A 9.3% Belgian dark strong ale. So yeah, interesting. Let's go for it. Now please don't explode. Ah, it's okay. Right, there we go. You always have to be careful with these Belgian style beers, they can explode a little bit. But yeah, this could be very interesting. There we go. We'll take I think usually a 330 goes up to about here, so yeah, that'll do me. That'll do me for just now. We'll maybe sip on the rest of it later or share it when my friends come round. We'll decide. But yeah, as you can see, so let me just reposition this so that my OCD is happy. There we go. But yeah, as you can see, when we poured this beer, it had about a quarter to a 1/3 finger of a frothy, quite beigey tan head, but that's faded away to be nothing now. Actually, it's faded away to just be absolutely nothing. So yeah, I have to say the colour of this beer looks absolutely lovely as well. But yeah, in terms of a Belgian dark strong ale, if we shine the light through this, it's actually got a lovely ruby colour to it. I think you can see that just looking at the little viewfinder on the camera here. I think you guys can see that pretty well actually. It looks beautiful, I have to say. So yeah, if you shine the light through it, it's got a lovely, it's almost the same colour as my hoodie actually that I've got on. I love this big fluffy hoodie. It's got a big fluffy inside, which is nice. But yeah, colour of that beer is absolutely lovely. So definitely one of the redder Belgian style beers that I've come across in recent times, in fact. But it had a lovely head on the top. If I was looking at this, I might think it was like a Doppelbock or an Imperial Red or a Quadruple or something like this. But it certainly looks like a lovely beer. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the surface there, but otherwise it looks very calm. The carbonation seems to have kind of disappeared out of it for the most part. But yeah, it's actually pretty much crystal clear. It just doesn't look that way because of how dark the colour is. But remember, when it comes to the colour of beers, it depends on 1, the type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your wort boil, and 3, any adjuncts or barrel aging that you do. So yeah, certainly looks pretty nice, this one. So nothing madly surprising about the appearance of this one. I was surprised a little bit at how red it was, but yeah, that's not uncommon for a kind of Belgian strong dark ale, if you like. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one then. I'm really curious about this beer. Ooh, now that's interesting. Yeah, you can definitely smell that earthiness out of this. I've never had either. I've never actually eaten either of the things that are in this, so I researched a little bit to see kind of what they're like, what you kind of should get, and we'll see how that actually translates into the flavour. But I'm expecting like quite a herbal sort of, quite a herbally, quite a sweet beer, but to have quite a herbal undertone. So we'll see how that comes out. But yeah, you get there's quite a big earthiness comes out of this one initially. It's got an earthy sort of green thing. It's almost a little bit like a sort of green pepper, or something like that. Yeah, it's almost a little bit green peppery actually. It's a very unusual aroma. I'm not used to these sort of things. I've had a few breweries. I've had a few beers recently where they've added some really random adjuncts into the beer, and it can be quite interesting. I have to say that about it. It can be quite an interesting thing to do. But yeah, the aroma of that is really unusual actually. So yeah. So yeah, big herbal, earthy, green peppery sort of thing coming out of this beer initially. But once it starts to open up a little bit, you start to get some of the other things in the beer as well. Like when you're quite far away from the aroma, you get a good bit of red fruit out of it. And you also get some nice brown sugars in there. But yeah, on the brown sugary side of things, you can definitely smell a good little bit of a sweet caramelly note to this one. There's a little bit of a toasty brown sugar in there as well, I would say. So yeah, it's good little bit of toasty brown sugar underneath, good bit of a kind of sweet treacly molassesy caramel in there. Don't know if it's maybe maybe it's not dark enough to be treacle and molasses actually, but there's quite an interesting thing going on with this beer for sure. Yeah, the sort of herbally earthy component that comes out of this is really, really interesting. I've never smelled anything quite like that, to be honest with you, in beers in all the 2,800 that we've done on the channel. But yeah, I can certainly appreciate how this one goes about its business. So yeah, there's a little bit. There is a wee bit of kind of woodiness and breadiness and nuttiness to this beer as well. You can smell that kind of forming the backbone of the beer. So yeah, definitely a little bit of a kind of brown bready sort of thing, a wee bit of woodiness and things like that. Then the sweet brown sugars. But I would say that the kind of herbally, earthy, green peppery sort of things out of this, they dominate the aroma here. Is there a hoppy component? I mean, you can get a little bit of a kind of floral and grassy component to the beer. So there's a little bit of hoppy character to it, and a wee bit of kind of smoother earthiness underneath. But yeah, the green component of the beer, I think, suits the rest of it. Suits the other things that are going on in this. It actually does smell. From the aroma, I think this beer is going to be quite light in its mouthfeel. And a trick with these Belgian strong ales is that they often use, brew sugar. And that's why Belgian beers tend to have a lower mouthfeel compared to ales that you have, like other ales of similar strength, because they use the brew sugar rather than thickening the beer up with malt, basically. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, there's definitely a bit of a kind of plummy note to it. It's got a bit of a sharp raisin, figs definitely, and I want to say a wee bit of a blackberry. It's got a little bit of, there's quite a bit of raisiny sharpness and a bit of blackberry sharpness, some fig underneath, then a juicy kind of plummy element to it as well. So I really like how the certain parts of the aroma of this go together. The herbally side of things is a little bit overpowering in a sense, but you can sometimes get that with beers where they use these kind of adjuncts, so we'll see how it turns out in the flavour. But definitely take a little bit of time to ponder over the aroma of this beer. before you get stuck into it, but I'm curious to see how it turns out, so let's go for it. So this one is the Tears of Atum, a 9.3% Belgian dark strong ale, or strong dark Belgian ale, don't know exactly what to say, brewed with Angelica and Fireweed from Panimo Narri, just to the north of Oulu in northwestern Finland. Let's get stuck in. Slanja, skål, cheers, kipis. It is interesting. It's a lot. The flavour is a lot more balanced than the aroma, definitely. And that's just something you can get sometimes. You know, sometimes some adjuncts develop a really powerful aroma, but yeah, the flavour of this beer is a lot more balanced than the aroma would have you believe. I was a bit worried about it, I have to admit, but I didn't want to pass judgment before tasting it, because sometimes, you know, based on experience, these kind of things can happen. But yeah, it's quite balanced in the aroma and the flavour, which is nice. But yeah, that's a really interesting. It's a really interesting concept, this beer, actually. I had a beer from the Netherlands, and the brewery name's gone right in my head. I want to say it's like Urm or something, but I like Urm. And I had a beautiful kind of herbal based beer from them, and it's a really interesting concept, if you like. There's not many breweries doing this kind of thing, and these beers, they're quite unusual, and I think they're you know, the beer scene in many ways is quite open, but I think it's not really opened to sort of herbal and adjuncty type beers of this sort of creed, of this variety, I guess we could say. It's not really opened. The beer scene's never really opened up to these kind of things, but this is interesting. I mean, this is why I like doing these reviews, to find random stuff like this. It works, it really does. But yeah, very herbal Belgian beer, this one. But I wonder if some of the inspiration for this beer is drawn from the group beers. I've had a couple of group beers from the Netherlands and Belgium before, where they use these herbs instead of hops and things. So yeah, I wonder if that's part of the idea behind this beer, actually. But this is nice, you know. Thumbs up to Panimo Narri. They're doing looks as if they're doing something quite unique up there. And it sweetens up, definitely, the more you taste of it. But yeah, let's try and break this beer down. First impression of it, though, it's a quite an oily but still a very slick beer, this one, and it develops a sweetness the further you go into the aftertaste, but there's a good herbal and woody sort of backbone to it as well. So yeah, the backbone of the beer then, if we talk about middle third of your palate, this beer, it feels like a mixture of woody and sort of bready in the middle third of your tongue. So you've got a really nice, just woody smoothness on the back of the beer, but on top of that, you get this kind of almost, it's a mix between wholemeal and a little bit of a mix between kind of rye bread. It really feels quite bready on top of that, but that's not too thick. It's like a sort of woodiness and then a sort of grainy, brown bready sort of thing sitting on top of that. So I can really appreciate how that goes together. It's got an element of a kind of bread crusty sort of thing going on with it. But then kind of in the middle of your palate, it's interesting because in the very centre of your palate, you've got a good little bit of brown sugar there. So let's focus on that for a minute. So yeah, in the centre of your palate, you get a lovely kind of brown sugary element to this one. I would hesitate to go as far as saying that it's like treacly molasses, but it's not a million miles away from that. There is quite a highly caramelised brown sugary element sitting in the middle of the palate there, but as you move further out from that, it sort of mellows out a little bit, and then you start to get a little bit more of a kind of toasty, caramelly note to it, and then it becomes almost more a little bit biscuity like as you reach the kind of extremes of the palate. Now the question you'll be asking, where are the Fireweed and the Angelica in this thing? So yeah, on the bready elements, like you've got in the middle of your tongue, you've got this kind of circle where all the brown sugars are, but then as you progress to either side of that, you get the breadiness again, and the sort of herbal notes are kind of infused into that sort of brown bready element that the beer has. And yeah, I mean, it's a little bit earthy, it's a little bit kind of herbal and stuff like that. I really struggle to describe the flavours of herbs properly. It's got a very, it's got a little bit of a, how would you even describe that? It's a little bit sort of like, I find this beer quite savoury in a lot of ways because of the herbs and things that it's got in it. So maybe it is fair to describe this beer as quite savoury in a sense. And those herbal notes, they really smoothen out and mellow out the further you go into the aftertaste. Some of the brown sugar and sweetness lingers there, but then the woodiness and the graininess of the bready character kind of the kind of mellows out as well with this beer. So yeah, I really like how this one goes about its business in that manner of speaking. So yeah, the middle third of the palate is quite nice in this one. Yeah. So I just have to say to Narri, this is a really quirky beer. It's actually quite hard to describe just because of how random it is, but it works, and that's the main thing, is that it works. So yeah, I like it. Be curious to try a few more of those things actually. Yeah, I'd be curious to know, because it does have an IPA. I don't know if that's a kind of more straight shooting IPA or if it's going to have some sort of herb in it like the other ones. But yeah, it's pretty. It's definitely an interesting one for sure. But yeah, I just noticed it says on the side here that it's best before the 1st of 2023. I was surprised at that with the kind of pop top in it actually. But yeah, interesting beer for sure. But yeah, we've just done the middle third of the palate. Let's focus on the other parts of the palate then. So on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel a little bit more of a kind of grainy bread crusty element there, which is nice. And then on the back third of your palate, you get a little bit more of a slightly toasty grainy element there, but it's also quite herbal at the same time. You do definitely get a little bit of that herbal kind of slightly dry character towards the back of the palate too. So I certainly like that. But yeah, on the sides of the palate, I think on top of that actually, you do get a little bit of a kind of airiness, if you like. You get some of those airy flavours from the yeast, so you can feel that the height of the flavour goes up on that back third of your palate, and then again as you move further forward, you can feel that gradually kind of condensing down. Then on the border region, it condenses down quite a lot, and as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, it gets more it definitely gets more kind of condensed, and the flavours are a little bit more kind of squashed in, which is good. But yeah, I like how that side of things goes together. So yeah, very nice, very, very nice. But in terms of the hoppy side of the beer then, in the back corners of the palate, you do get a little bit of earthiness in this one. I'm just curious as to whether there are hops in this beer, because quite often, yeah, no, it does have hops in it. It says humala, which in Finnish, yeah, that is hops. Because I was wondering about that. Sometimes when you get the adjuncty beers like this, they sometimes don't use hops because they say that the herbs kind of replace it. But yeah, because this beer is very smooth around the edge of the palate, so I wasn't sure. But yeah, definitely hops in it. So you do get a little bit of an earthiness there at the back corners of the palate, absolutely, but it does develop quite a nice herbal note as you move further forward, and as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, you do get a more kind of floral aromatic-y thing there too. But round the very front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and grassy, and there's a teeny little bit of zestiness from the grassiness there as well. Obviously, the longer you age the beer, the more the green component will drop out of it, and the smoother it will be on the edges of the palate. But yeah, I certainly like that about this beer for sure. The green component, I think, works quite well with everything else that's going on in it. But yeah, the fruity side of the beer is quite interesting as well. But yeah, on that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a bit of a thicker kind of bready note, then a bit of a grainy bread crust on top of it, and underneath, on the base of that front third of your palate, it's a sort of brown bready kind of thing that you get, and that little oily bubble that you always get on the front of the palate where the fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. There's quite a lot going on in this one. So on the fruity side of things with this beer, when you take it in, it's got a lovely juicy fruity element to it, absolutely. So there's a wee bit of a raisiny sharpness to it, although it's quite a juicy raisin in that sense. You get a lot of kind of pruny and datey elements out of this one, and for me, I get a sort of sultana vibe to it, like a sort of dried green, white, grapey note there. So at the back of that front third of the palate, yeah, you get a bit of datey, pruny kind of thing in there, sultana type element. As you move further forward, it gradually evolves to be a little bit more sort of figgy, if you like, and then on the front kind of end of the tongue, I find that it's got a little bit of a sort of berryish note. Yeah, there's maybe a wee bit of a mix of a red berry, blackberry sort of thing coming out of this beer on the front half of that front third of your palate. So the fruity element to this beer is quite interesting. It's a bit oily and a bit juicy, but I think it works. I think it does work pretty well. So yeah, it's definitely interesting how all of that pieces together. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer is quite nice. I think it really leans towards that sort of sultana, like note, the further you go into the aftertaste, and that sort of complements the herbal side of the beer quite well. So yeah, I think Jana at Panimo Narri has come up with a really interesting idea here, and it certainly works. So for me, as a kind of seasoned beer taster, trying things like this is quite interesting because it's a completely different approach to brewing that you don't come across all that often. But yeah, I certainly look forward to trying a few more of their beers after this. This is pretty damn solid, so well done to them, well done. But yeah, let's just kind of round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So I think it's quite, as I said earlier, it's quite a slick beer, this one. It's kind of top end to mid body for me. Carbonation is, it's virtually non-existent in this one. You saw when we poured it, a lot of the carbonation I think kind of escaped, but yeah, there's just a little bit of it left. So it's a very smooth and very slick beer, as I say. Quite an oily mouthfeel overall, really nice and oily and slick, which I can certainly appreciate. The malty side of this beer, it's got a nice smoothness underneath, and you get a nice bit of kind of breadiness and graininess, and the herbal qualities in there. It does have a good little bit of sweetness though to balance it out, which I think is critical with these sort of herbally leaning beers. You really need balance. You really need balance with these things. So yeah, absolutely. But on the fruity side of things, yeah, it's got a little bit of sharpness, a little bit of juiciness in there as well. So it's kind of got everything you want this. In terms of IBUs, I think you're talking maybe about 15, 20 IBUs in this beer. There's not a lot of bitterness to it, I would say. But yeah, it gets a thumbs up from me, this. I think this is a really interesting beer, and probably one of the quirkiest ones I've had from Finland so far. So I look forward to trying a few more of their things. But I think we can leave it there for this one. This was the Tears of Atum, a 9.3% Belgian dark strong ale, brewed in collaboration with the Aeon band, and brewed with Angelica and Fireweed, and it certainly worked for sure. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Panimo Narri, if you've tried a few of them. We've got one more to review from these guys fairly soon, and I'm sure I'll need to ask Riku to get me another one or two of these at some point in the future, because I've certainly, this one certainly has made me think a little bit. Maybe a half litre of this is a little bit much. Maybe a 330 can would have been a little bit better, but still, that's me nitpicking, if you like. So yeah, check these guys out. I look forward to trying more of their beers. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media. Thank you to Riku for making this possible, and I'll catch you soon. Slanja, Skol, Kipis, and Kitos.